Hi, this is Erin Broadbent, and this is my AEP 800 Modular 5 assignment. The first article is Barriers to Using Web 2.0 in 21st Century Schools. I really enjoyed this article. One of the things I liked about it was that it talked about some of the negatives. I think a lot of times we start thinking only about the positives with technology, and we forget to think about what are our barriers. Technology is now 24/7. It's kind of hard to get away from nowadays. It's everywhere. Schools, therefore, need to be equipped with technology. With that comes the barrier of money. Not every district can afford to provide students with technology. iPads cost money, Chromebooks cost money, Promethean boards cost money, and when that stuff breaks, it costs more money. The access and integrating technology into lessons is also a barrier. That was something that I had mentioned for myself in a previous article, talking about how as a counselor I go classroom to classroom, so sometimes it's really hard for me to get that technology into my lesson. I don't always know how to access it or what's available to me. With that also comes lack of time, lack of training, and lack of support. For me personally, I don't always have the time to do technology. I get a 30-minute lesson or I get a 20-minute lesson. So if technology doesn't work, I don't spend the time to mess with it. In my years of experience, I really haven't had a lot of technology training. It's kind of been figure it out, learn on the fly, which leads right into lack of support. When it doesn't work, there's usually not someone around that can help me right away. They're busy teaching a class, or maybe a couple buildings I've been in, we haven't even had an IT person. It's been one person for the district. So those things definitely can in fact impact the teachers wanting to use the lesson. I kind of already mentioned this, but wait time, especially if something breaks or fails, like I've said a few times now, I don't get a lot of time, and I'm not going to spend 15 minutes trying to figure out why something won't work. I move on. It then sometimes makes me hesitant in the future to use technology because I don't want to plan two lessons. The next article was 7 common barriers that obstruct tech in education. The first one is not having a vision, that schools need to have a strong plan. I can definitely see this. The school I'm at now, I adore my principal. I think she's fantastic. She's not techie at all. She does not really like technology that much. She hates Google. So we don't really have a strong technology plan. I will say she's trying. In fact, this summer we were discussing something and the best way to kind of do something, and I wanted to say let's use technology, but I knew she was a little resistant, and she actually ended up saying, you know what, we have technology, let's use it. So I think, we're kind of getting that plan, but without a plan, it's just kind of everyone running on their own, doing their own thing. Changing what a teacher's role should be, changing what was always thought to be the role. The administration has to support the staff. Again, I love my principal, but she's not techie. It's not that she doesn't want to support us. She just doesn't always know the best way to support us. And so I think if she had maybe some more technology training, that would help her support us. Considering the achievement gap, as I mentioned in a previous assignment, my students come from kind of all over and have a very wide economic status. Some of my kids go home and I know they have iPads, I know they have laptops and cell phones even, and they have tons of stuff at their disposal, but I also know that I have other students that go home and they're technically considered homeless. They don't have a home, they're rooming with other family members, and they don't have internet and iPads and different stuff like that. And I think it's important to be aware of what we're assigning to the kids and what we're giving them. Figuring out how to scale promising interventions. Teachers want to be rewarded and empowered for their ideas. They've got good ideas as well, and we need to listen to those. The money, again, mentioned that in the previous slide. Money's huge. It needs to be a monetary priority. I think at times that's just so hard because it'll cost so much up front. And as I mentioned previously, then when it breaks, it costs a lot of money. I know someone was talking to me about how much money it costs for the light bulbs and Promethean boards and, different stuff like that I think there just needs to be some funds set aside. This is the tech fund. It's the it broke, now what do we do fund. Thinking beyond textbooks, administration should encourage the teachers to think beyond the book. Again, that all administrative support, but also what do we do when it doesn't work? When I try and do a fun technology lesson plan and it doesn't work, it's so much easier for me to grab a book and read to the kids because I know the book's going to work. So having that administrative support of what else can we do and what's available to us. Make your environment match your goals. I think that also relates to some of the other barriers as well. If you want teachers to use Promethean boards, then we've got to give them to them. If we want students to have Chromebooks, we have to find a way to give them Chromebooks to use. The next article was the digital divide. And again, this was touched on in the previous article as well, but students come from various places. As I mentioned, one might go home to high-speed internet, an iPad, and a credit card that can buy them lots of games. Another student goes home, no TV, no internet, no iPad. Excuse me. Internet's not a given. It's technically not a necessity. You can live without it. It's not food, it's not water, it's not shelter. I know many people would disagree and they don't want to give up their internet, but technically it's not a necessity. And this article kind of talked about that and talked about the divide and how some of us have it and some of us don't, and what does that look like in various parts of the world. The article also mentioned how students will use their cell phones. It doesn't always work as well. They run out of data. I know I was really struggling with this assignment actually because my own internet was acting up today. And I thought about using my cell phone and trying to figure it out. And that thought was really just disheartening to me because my cell phone is little and it's a lot harder to work on and there's a lot less space. So again, even though, it's not a given, it's not technically a necessity, our students really do need internet. And this article talked about, kind of what are we going to do and how are we going to approach that, which I will talk about a little bit more later. Open educational resources. This was a really interesting article to me. I hadn't really ever thought about it, I guess. I didn't know that this was an option for some people. Educational resources teachers can grab online. Started out as supplemental. Teachers could use it with their core curriculum, but over the years, for some areas, it's their actual curriculum and it's online. I think that districts that are strapped for money, this would be amazing and provide them good, solid, cheap, free curriculum, and that's game changing. One thing that I really enjoyed in this article, the statement, one such effort is being led by K-12 systems like the District of Columbia Public Schools, which has sought to customize content to teachers' needs and deepen their understanding of academic material by giving them a role in developing it. We are moving to a new math curriculum this year, and I have heard so many teachers that have said, did we get a say in this? Did teachers pick this out? Who picked this curriculum? Why are we using this curriculum? Letting teachers have a role in developing curriculum and picking it out and figuring out what works best. They're with those kids all day. They know what they need. I think that's fantastic, and I really support that. Again, the math curriculum is available to the districts for free. Then you have to pay for things like professional development, printing, access to phone and online help. And again, I think that districts would really just save a lot of money. And that money could be used on iPads, on not textbooks, on Chromebooks, laptops. what a great way to save some money. The last thing is the video by Angela McFarlane. Tech changes and advances are more predominant at primary levels versus secondary levels. I have to say I was really surprised by that. After watching the video, I think she made a lot of good points, but working at the primary level, I would have assumed secondary was more advanced because they're simply more advanced. I get what she's saying, and I kind of was like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree with that. I just wouldn't have thought that before hearing her side. Primary has usually smaller schools, smaller classes, which really helps because the teachers spend more time with their students, and so they're able to really help them with their technology use and build that relationship and build that not one-on-one, but one on maybe 20 or 25. It's a sustained investment that they have with their students. It can also adjust to their pedagogy module. Easier for the primary teachers to kind of adjust than the secondary teachers. Again, I wouldn't have thought that before she said that. Do you feel the digital divide can be resolved? Why or why not? So this was one of the articles really heavily talked about this. And yes, I do think it will be resolved. As I mentioned in the previous slide, it's not a necessity. We don't have to have it right now. It's not food, it's not water, it's not shelter. We don't have to have it. However, I do think that as we move forward with our society and culture, I think it will become a necessity. I think about things like the telephone system, and there was a time when not a lot of people had telephones or cell phones. Wasn't needed. You could use a payphone. Nowadays, you can't find payphones. There has to be some sort of landline or cell phone or something. And companies figured it out. We figured out how to get access. We figured out how to get cell phone towers. So I think that at some point, yeah, it will just have to get figured out. I don't know how, but it will become a necessity. Look at taking online classes. I think that that's becoming more and more the norm as well. And schools are going to need internet. And I think that at some point, it'll just get itself worked out. What skill sets do you feel 21st century students must acquire prior to graduation? So I think there's quite a few skills that they need. At first, I think that they need to know how to use that technology in a way that will help them in their future, help them with their future job, help them applying to colleges, opening bank accounts. I think about all my banking's online. Most of my bills I pay online. I don't really have any bills ever sent to my house anymore, and we need to equip our students with the knowledge of how to do that. We need to teach them how to have a digital resume, digital portfolios. People aren't wanting paper copies anymore during their interviews. Very important. We need to teach them how to use social media and not look like a fool. Employers do look at it. Colleges do look at it. And you can think everything is locked down and secure, but it's not. And I think it's very important to make sure that we're teaching kids, you have a digital footprint. What you say continues on and other people see that. Talking again from the previous slide, it's not free. So are you going to need a budget for this? And how are you going to budget for the internet? How are you going to budget for buying a computer? If you're going to college and you have to have the internet, how does that look for you? How does that work? And lastly, I think that we need to have their skills be on par with their peers so that as they're leaving my building, they're at the same level as other graduating seniors. As they're leaving college, at the same level as other graduating college seniors. And I think we need to give them the confidence to figure it out. You can figure it out, and you will. That simple as that. I didn't really know how to use things like Screencastify, but I figured it out. I had to. And so I think give them that confidence that they know what they're doing. And even if they don't actually know, they can figure it out.